we begin right here, so that looks pretty good. The chat wall seems pretty lively right now, and it looks like even the stream is beginning. So with all that said, I think we can commence this episode. Yes, welcome ladies and gentlemen to a very special episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And I just want to start things off by saying that hope you guys had a very wonderful holiday season, or a very special holiday week, considering that we went through the week of Christmas. And I could just say right now, I've had a wonderful time with my family and playing around with my presents. In fact, I kind of took a bit of a holiday break so I can mostly spend time with not only my loved ones, but a brand new loved one in my life that I would like to call Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So I am definitely having a great time, and hopefully you guys are also enjoying some of the new videos that I have released, especially some of the big ones, including the final part of Animation Look Back Ralph Bakshi, and of course, the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2018. But before we begin, I would just like to mention something a little bit special about this episode in particular. Now, considering that we went through a holiday week, there hasn't been much news related to animation or in general that really surfaced. Mostly because everybody was just spending their times during the holidays and mostly having a bit of a break. So, what I like to do during this time, considering that there really isn't much to talk about this week, what I would like to do, considering that we are in the final week of the year, I am actually really excited to bring this from my old podcast, is that I would like to go back and reflect upon some of the biggest news that has actually happened throughout 2018. Now, we're going to be looking into some crazy things. We're going to be looking back into some stories that we have already talked about here in AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. So this is honestly something that I really am excited to do, and hopefully you guys will be having a great time reflecting back upon some of the big things that happened in 2018. So without further ado, I would like to say, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the top 5 animation news of 2018. So with all that said, I would like to know from the chat wall, guys, are you all ready for the top 5 animation news of 2018? Are you all ready for this list and this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, guys. Come on. Let me see this. Okay, perfect. We are seeing some people that are ready. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like the enthusiasm. Perfect. I like to see that coming from the chat wall. Well, oh, hold on. Little Wilkin says no. Well, too bad, because we're going to start it with ready or not. But, okay, so, with all that said and done, yeah, oops, let me rephrase that, actually. That didn't come out as well as I thought. Let's go ahead and start this thing off, beginning, of course, with number 5. Now, I just would like to mention that with number 5, this is actually a story that I have yet to actually discuss about here in AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And there are a few reasons why I never really brought it up, to be honest. It was mainly because, number 1, it was a subject that everybody already talked about. Like, on YouTube, you would see so many people discussing about it already. It seemed to be, like, the hottest piece of drama at the time. And 2, while this controversy was at its highest, I wasn't even here. I was on vacation, so by the time that I came back, it was already too late to put my piece into it, and I don't think I would even have anything to add on to the conversation. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and begin at number 5 on our list and discuss about probably the most talked about animation personality of the year, the one and only Butch Hartman. Yes, it's time for AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast to get into the Oaxis controversy. Now, for those of you that don't necessarily know, Butch Hartman is actually the man who is known to create many beloved shows on Nickelodeon, including Fairly Odd Parents, Tough Puppy, Danny Phantom, and many more. And throughout his time, he is actually known to be an animation veteran. Even before working at Nickelodeon, he has done numerous of projects, hopping from one movie or TV show project to another, in which he would chronicle, of course, on his YouTube channel. Now, what is actually very interesting to note about Butch Hartman this year is that it's not just about Oaxis that really made him, or more to say, that really put him in the spotlight. Because the first time that Butch actually showed up in the public eye and really got people very interested was actually with a YouTube video that he made that really went viral called Why I Left Nickelodeon, which was pretty much to announce that after 20 years working at Nickelodeon and making shows like Fairly Odd Parents, he ultimately decided to quit. And this was a 14-minute video that he had on his YouTube channel, and it really went viral, where as I am recording this, so far he has 5.9 million views on that video alone. And since then, his YouTube channel really got a massive boost. In fact, debatably, he is actually the most popular animation personality on YouTube. Not even related to animation directly, like not even as someone who worked on animation, but more like just the most popular person on YouTube that just talks about animation. Even more than Rebel Taxi, more than Bluetoons, and even more than Sabersparks. Because, again, as I'm recording this, his YouTube channel has now accumulated around 745,000 subscribers. So, yeah, not only has he made it as an internet personality, but he also made it as a YouTuber as well. So this little piece right over here really did live, it really got people rather perplexed. Why did he decide to quit Nickelodeon? Like, what's going to be the next big project for Butch Hartman, considering that he really did left a major impact in the animation industry? Well, it's not necessarily animation related that he wanted to do, because a few months later, he actually went and revealed that he wanted to do a streaming service. And he opened up a Kickstarter campaign called Oaxis Entertainment. And the way that he promoted it was to say that he wanted to go and create this streaming service that would be filled with numerous of TV shows in which the big theme of Oaxis would be that the core of it, the heart of Oaxis, would be that it would keep its family values. That no matter what shows they would go and watch, family values is the one mandatory thing that anything that comes out of Oaxis, it has to be there. And he would go and demand $250,000 in order to get that. He wanted to make sure that he would get enough money to go and fund all the different TV shows for this streaming service in particular. Now, when he did announce that, a lot of people and a lot of YouTubers just laughed it off. He thought, like, a lot of people just thought that it was just a really stupid scenario. It was just a really stupid idea that there was just no way that it could even succeed. Well, believe it or not, it seems that with Oaxis, Butch Hartman ended up getting the last laugh, because surprisingly enough, and I've seen it happen, that it was on the last day where it got a massive boost. I think for a long time it was just sitting around at like $10,000, but then suddenly in the final day, he managed to get so much money where, as you can probably see here, where out of 1,290 backers, he managed to gather a total of $268,134, making the Oaxis campaign a big success. But instead of everybody celebrating the fact that Butch Hartman actually succeeded in this, a lot of people were left pretty angry about it, and the more people uncovered what's been happening behind the scenes, the more that we start to notice a bit of shady practices, where apparently Butch Hartman had to manipulate his way into getting the success of Oaxis. Because it wasn't just for his animation fans that he would go and try to promote Oaxis, saying that, oh, it has family values, come and spend your money on Oaxis and stuff like that. He would also go into Christian conventions, because if you guys would watch Butch Hartman's videos, you'll probably notice that, yes, Butch Hartman is indeed a born-again Christian. Like, this dude is actually very serious when it comes to loving Jesus and loving God. In fact, if there is one thing that he loves more than animation, it would have to be Jesus. And while he is in those Christian conventions, he would go and promote Oaxis and telling them as well to go and fund their money onto Oaxis. However, he wouldn't promote it to say that this is a streaming service in which the core is family values. He would say that the core of it would be Christian values. So that's why a lot of people do feel like they kind of got manipulated, or they kind of got lied to by Butch Hartman. So that's why afterwards you would see a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of social media posts that would rant about the shady practices that Butch Hartman has done to illegitimately get his way into success with his Oaxis campaign. And to make matters worse, though, apparently Butch Hartman is not necessarily all that great when it comes to damage control, because he ended up making things worse, where there was even this like one live stream that he has done where he would be playing video games, and he would say that he, like, because of his success, he feels like he's somehow above criticism, or, like, I don't know specifically what he said, but he said something along the lines of, like, if you're not an artist, then you don't have the permission to criticize me. Which I will say, thankfully, I am an artist myself. I have a DeviantArt with many of my artworks that I've presented, whether it be digital art or paintings or even sculptures and all that kind of stuff. So I can say that, yes, I am an artist, so technically I do have my card to criticize Butch Hartman on his scenario. So, as you could probably imagine, this whole scenario just became an entire mess, down to the point that the controversy had to conclude with Butch Hartman literally writing an apology letter and post it on social media. And I don't mean just like typing it, like literally write it on paper, take a picture of it, and then post it on social media. And that's how this whole controversy concluded. And honestly, by doing my research, it was honestly quite fascinating to see the whole scenario just unfurl and really see how Butch Hartman kind of became such a controversial figure, where, like, right after he left Nickelodeon, it seems that things, I don't know how to say it. It's not necessarily a downfall. Like, he has seen success, but his reputation did get a major hit. So I think the best way to describe it is that after Butch Hartman decided to quit Nickelodeon, he did find success, but at what cost? In fact, my feelings for this are honestly very similar to one video that I saw that was honestly really very well done, and I highly recommend that you go check it out. It's the video of The Right Opinion. He made a video about the whole Butch Hartman controversy, and it's honestly really well done, and honestly very well edited, very well edited as well. So if you guys have, like, after this, maybe go ahead and check out The Right Opinion's video on this. It's actually really good. But I definitely do feel a lot of parallels, for my opinion, with his, where I definitely do feel that in this scenario, Butch Hartman has nobody to blame about how his reputation really got a massive hit other than himself, because he really did poorly handle the situation. He didn't really connect a lot of things. Like, he would just go and do things, but not necessarily connect everything together. He would try to promote on one side and then try to promote on another side, which you could debate that these are two completely opposite groups, where you got the animation people who love him for his works like The Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom, and then you got the Christian group, in which they do love Butch Hartman because he is a very prominent figure who is also really in touch and in love with God and Jesus. So with the way that he would try to promote these two people, he would try two very different tactics, which does seem a bit manipulative, and especially afterwards. Now, I do understand that taking criticism, that admitting when you're in the wrong, it is very tough. But with the way that Butch Hartman did it, with the way that he kind of with the way that after his campaign was a success, he did handle it very poorly, like a bit of a sore winner in a sense, where like it's just a very wrong move to say like, oh, I don't take criticism. You could say things, but they don't mean nothing unless you're an artist, unless you know what I've been through, which honestly is kind of bullcrap there. So yeah, it really is a bit of a dick move, but you could definitely tell where a lot of it really went wrong for Butch Hartman, and like he has no one to blame but himself to really put him in that scenario, and especially when momentarily it also put a hit onto his YouTube channel, where I know that we have seen a bit of a theme where there are plenty of YouTube channels that we have seen this year that's seen a massive downfall, most namingly Channel Awesome. But with Butch Hartman, after this controversy, after he did that controversial live stream, his channel would get a significant drop. There would be like tens of thousands subscribers daily that would just unsubscribe to him, that would just completely abandon Butch Hartman. And it would have to take him a bit until he would release that apology letter to really make things up and to have people move on. But looking back at it, I noticed that it really was a scenario that nobody really felt like they left as a winner. Again, like, this is a case that, yes, Butch Hartman succeeded, but at what cost? Because nobody really came out happy. Nobody came out pleased with the whole scenario with Oaxis. Not just Butch Hartman, but even the critics who would go after Butch Hartman. Now, you may recall throughout this year that I would have some special guest stars like Eye of Saul and Pie Guy Rules. And believe it or not, before I would begin, or even when I would invite them to have them be on board as a special guest for the podcast, they would legitimately ask me to not talk about Butch Hartman. It's just that it really, like, the controversy took a massive toll on them to the point that they no longer want to be associated with it whatsoever. Now, I wasn't even planning to talk about Butch Hartman when I brought them over, but they had to say it as a precaution, and that should really say a lot about how it really is not fun to get into. And I think that's also another reason why I didn't really put my own piece until right now about this whole controversy, because really it was a scenario that nobody came out as a winner. Nobody really came out with pride, or they feel like they have achieved something good in this scenario, because it just really became a mess that really left nobody unhappy and kind of like spoiled all the fun with the whole Oaxis campaign. But it honestly is very interesting to see how all this would unfurl, and to see where Butch Hartman would land himself now immediately after leaving Nickelodeon, where he went from the creator of one of the most successful shows on the channel to now where he's more recognized as a bit of an internet personality with, although a successful campaign, but it is a poorly managed campaign. So, but I will say, on a positive note, though, that I do congratulate Butch Hartman on owning up to his mistakes after it, and hopefully, maybe he can actually turn Oaxis into something good. Maybe Oaxis could actually be a streaming service that would be worthwhile. Who knows? And even though he has made a lot of mistakes with it, hopefully he will take these mistakes and use them as lessons to go and improve not only himself, but more his marketing approaches, because that is also one thing that he needs to go and develop a little bit more, is to develop some business strategies, some marketing strategies, in order to make sure that they are good, so that he can actually develop some better stuff. So hopefully with future marketing on shows of Oaxis, maybe he'll go improve on them. Who knows? I guess we'll just go and we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, that's pretty much my number 5 on the list, is just Butch Hartman in general, because we cannot deny that there hasn't been any other animator or someone in the animation industry that has been talked about the most, more so than Butch Hartman. So, with all that said, I would like to go into the chat wall right now, and I want to ask you guys about my number 5 pick. How do you feel about the whole Butch Hartman controversy? Do you feel like it wasn't managed well? Are you guys happy for Butch Hartman on where he is now? Let me know what you think on the whole controversy. Okay. Okay, there's my mouse. Like, I also see it on my screen as well. Like, when I see it flying around on this screen right over here, it shows up, so it's kind of confusing for me. Anyways, let's get back into the comments from people. Let's see. I just ignored everything what happened recently with Channel Awesome. I just carried on. Okay, so that's just the nostalgia critic and stuff like that, not on this. Butch Hartman is one of my inspirations for drawing and animation. It does sadden me that he would do something like this. At least it's not as bad as John Kay, who is another inspiration of mine, but he is still an inspiration. In fact, he has provided another inspiration for me. The I must never act like how he is in real life kind of inspiration. That is definitely true, dude. That is definitely true right over there. If Oaxis ends up pushing his Christian version of family values, I'll avoid it like the plague. Those family values are actually toxic to actual family values. Yeah, you do bring up a good point, especially in this current, not just cultural, but even political climate. Like, it really does... It really does seem a bit iffy, and you really gotta define what you mean by Christian values, because if this is just a tool in order to try to forcefully convert kids into Christianity, then maybe it ain't something that's gonna be worthwhile. Like, unless if you're trying to make harmless content, like, if you want to try to make something where it's gonna be like the new home of VeggieTales, then maybe it won't be as bad, but yeah, you gotta be very careful when it comes to the Christian stuff. I'm just saying. Let's see right over here. Do we have any other comments? I'm pretty sure he didn't mean to. He's a very nice man. He's just probably blowing off steam on people who did criticize him. It happens to everyone. In fact, it happens to a lot of internet people this year. Even you, possibly, the time when you had to leave Mr. Coat. Actually... It was twice this year that I had to let off some major steam. Not just with the whole Mr. Coke controversy, but there is another one. Actually, I'm not going to say it right now because it is another number on the list. So I'm just, I'll just leave it until when the time comes. Let's see. AniMat, I have a question. Would this whole Oaxis incident be considered a scam? Because I haven't heard anything about Oaxis progress since. I mean, these things do take time, and I will say right now, if Butch Hartman doesn't give any updates within like a year or two, then yeah, I think it's time that people should probably start asking questions. In fact, hopefully, Butch Hartman would periodically give updates. Like, I'm not someone, like, I didn't give money to this Kickstarter, so maybe someone who has donated can probably vouch if they would get regular updates on what's going on with Oaxis, but I don't know. But if nobody is hearing anything from it, then honestly, at this point, I would say that, yeah, it probably could be a scam. So, I don't know. But I'm not saying it's a scam right now. It's probably best to see how this is going to develop. So, I'll just leave it at that. Okay. So, I think we're pretty much good with the whole Butch Hartman thing. And now it is going to be time that we're going to move on to our next number. Now, for the next number, it's going to be a little bit similar to what we just talked about with Butch Hartman. But it's not necessarily going to be Butch that we will be discussing about, because at the very least, say what you will about what happened to Butch Hartman, at the very least, he did leave off on a better spot than what happened to the whole cartoon community. And for my number 4, what I'm going to be discussing about, we're going to be getting into this controversy all over again, and this is what I would like to call the CalArts style and other complaints that have gone too far. Now, for this week, or not this week, but this year, for some reason, we have seen the cartoon community and the whole internet to an extent really having this pattern of complaining about animated series that have just been announced. Like, they wouldn't release anything, or they wouldn't release an actual episode of it, but they feel like they need to go and just complain about it. And I just would like to say, with the cartoon community, we have seen a lot of crap that they have done throughout the years. Rather it be stuff that is mean-spirited, like what happened with the whole Steven Universe controversy with bullying an artist for not portraying a character properly, or even last year with the whole insanity of McDonald's disastrous Szechuan sauce campaign based on a joke from Rick and Morty. But this one, it really does kind of take the cake. Now, we have seen several different complaints about recently announced shows, that some of which have even yet to be released. There are some of these shows that they're not going to even come out until 2019. Some good examples would include No Gizmondo, go away. What I mean is that we have seen complaints about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, which is the new animated series from DreamWorks Animation, and how a lot of people really complained about the designs of the characters and how She-Ra doesn't necessarily look feminine or attractive enough. And then we got the whole controversy with High Guardian Spice, which is Crunchyroll's first animated series, or yeah, it is Crunchyroll's first animated series that will be exclusive to the streaming service. And this got controversial for like numerous reasons, but a common one is mainly because of the trailer itself that doesn't necessarily explain much about the show, but rather the people behind the show and the studio that would be developing this series, on top of also the shady practices of Crunchyroll and where the money would go. And honestly, that's an entire controversy worth talking about in itself that has a pretty large history, but this piece right over here just adds fuel to the fire. Now, a lot of people would just go and immediately complain about these. But the first one though, the first animated series that people would complain about, that's the one that really killed off the cartoon community's reputation. And this is the one that the internet just really went too far. And I'm talking, of course, about Thundercats Roar. Now, it happened early in the summer, or at least late spring, that Cartoon Network went and officially revealed a new animated series that's going to be coming up for 2019 called Thundercats Roar, which is basically taking Thundercats and giving it the Teen Titans Go treatment by taking an animated series like Thundercats and give it a more cartoony and comedic take. And that's basically what they're trying to do, as you can see from the picture here, with many of the characters given an update. And from there, the hate on the announcement was so large, down to the point that it really did get carried away. So much so that people on the internet would go and create a new term that is apparently called the CalArts style. Now, apparently what this CalArts style is about is to pretty much justify some complainers that they would say that a lot of animated series nowadays, they look the same. More commonly, they would associate the CalArts style with many big TV shows like Adventure Time, Gravity Falls, Steven Universe, The Amazing World of Gumball, and even with this one right over here with Thundercats Roar, which is kind of ironic in a way because many of these shows, like Steven Universe, the show creators, they didn't even go to CalArts. So why CalArts is to blame on this, I don't even know. But the worst thing to even happen with this controversy is actually due to one far-right troll on Twitter actually making a mass shooting threat at CalArts because of this CalArts style. A situation that got so serious that CalArts, for one day, they had to close down the whole freaking school to make sure that this mass shooting doesn't actually happen. But no, it turns out to be, of course, from a dumb far-right troll, because, let's be honest, who else but Trump supporters and the far right would think that mass shootings are funny and something that America should keep on making? Like, those people are the only ones that would actually take mass shootings and the death of actual American children as kind of a joke, per se. They don't even care about children. They shouldn't even call themselves pro-life. They care more about guns than the lives of others. So that's pretty much the big thing. And that's really what killed off a lot of the reputation of not just the cartoon community, but it's really hard to go and take seriously whenever someone would go and complain about a newly announced TV show or a newly announced animated project. And I will say right now that when it comes to High Guardian Spice, I will admit that yes, I did kind of screw up when I first expressed my thoughts on this series in particular. I haven't done the right research for it, and yeah, I did acted a little more emotionally than rationally. That I will say, I did kind of screw up on that. But it should really say a lot over the fact that the first common sense reaction when I would hear that people are complaining about a newly announced series is to just roll my eyes and just tell the complainers to just shut up because they're acting pathetic. Because honestly, that's what we've been seeing with this. That's what we've been seeing with Thundercats Roar and also with She-Ra. It's just, it really got down to the point that it's hard to even take any of these complaints seriously. And I'm not saying that all the complaints are stupid. I'm sure that there are some legitimate criticisms towards High Guardian Spice and also towards She-Ra. Now that the series has been released on Netflix, now there are things that people can actually go and make constructive criticism about the series. But honestly, just what we've went through, just with the way that people reacted with stuff like Thundercats Roar and She-Ra, I'm just gonna ask, can you really blame me for basically discarding any of the criticisms that we would hear about High Guardian Spice after the stuff that we've went through? I mean, like, honestly, like, after, like, several times, after hearing, like, how insane people would go through after, like, Thundercats Roar, and how idiotic many of the complaints about She-Ra, saying, like, oh, She-Ra's not sexy enough. Like, honestly, it would be tough for me to, like, do the same thing and just say, like, okay, people are complaining, let's hear what they would have to say. No. You know, and that was my mindset from before. After, like, all the stuff that we went through, like, I don't want to, like, go and suddenly just change my mind on stuff like that. Like, like, the pattern seems to be there. Like, if this is stupid and then this is stupid, what's the difference with this one? And I will say right now that with the case, especially with High Guardian Spice and even with She-Ra, now, of course, there are some legitimate criticisms that could be said about these shows in particular. And I do understand now, like I said, with High Guardian Spice, and what people are not happy with. I do understand about the whole controversy with Crunchyroll. And yeah, the trailer, honestly, it didn't do a good job talking about the show itself, and it's mostly animators just patting themselves on the back. But in other cases, in the other case about stuff like people complaining about She-Ra and High Guardian Spice, it's honestly tough for them to criticize these and not sound bigoted. Because honestly, there's also this theme of misogyny that's really coming out. And I mean, with She-Ra, I don't think there's really much of an explanation as to why a lot of these complaints would seem a bit misogynistic, where people are mostly complaining that She-Ra is not sexy enough as much as they would be in the original animated series. And that's why because of the character designs, a lot of people would just complain that, oh, this show is just way too politically correct for me, and all that kind of crap. But even with High Guardian Spice and stuff like that, like, I have noticed that there have been a bit of misogynistic complaints on it as well, especially when there would be people that would go and try to criticize it by saying that it's spreading this feministic agenda or a feminist SJW agenda. That seems to be a theme that would keep on repeating. And also something that I really do not condone is really the fact that some of these people who would complain about High Guardian Spice, they would go and attack the animators. And that is honestly another major problem with all of these, including Thundercats Roar, is the way that all these people would go and attack the show's creators, even to the point of sending death threats. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I mean, if Thundercats Roar would get a mass shooting threat to CalArts because of some invented term that doesn't even freaking exist, then it's not hard to imagine that show creators of Thundercats Roar or She-Ra and the Princesses of Power or even High Guardian Spice, they would be getting death threats. And then at that point, you would see a lot of people complaining that one major thing about High Guardian Spice is actually regarding the factor that it would promote that it has a very diverse team. But then you see a lot of people complaining about the diversity aspect, rather it be that they're against diversity, or that they would complain that there's too much women. In fact, I have actually seen some people trying to make a hate campaign against one of the animators because of an old tweet, which is something I really do not condone, because I don't care whatever that person tweeted about, like, anti-men tweets or whatever. This is the same kind of behavior that a neo-Nazi and his deplorable terrorist groups have done in order to go and fire James Gunn out of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And honestly, the incident of what they tried to do with this individual who works on High Guardian Spice is honestly very similar. And that is something I do not respect and that I do not condone. And especially when there are people that would honestly complain about, oh, there's too much women working on High Guardian Spice, it's not diverse, there's not enough men. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? Are you really going out and trying to attack women working in the animation field, especially with the recent news that we have been hearing about regarding how women have been treated in the entertainment industry and especially in animation, with many perverted people like John Lasseter, like with John Kay, like with Chris Savino. And you think that it's not a good thing that we have more prominent women working on animation, especially on an animated series like High Guardian Spice? If you really do have a problem with the amount of women actually working on a TV show, then the problem is not the series. It's you, man. You gotta work on that bigotry right over there. There's no such thing as a problem with diversity. The real problem is actually you and your bigoted mindset. For some reason, you don't like it that women are working outside of the freaking kitchen. I'm just saying, dude. Now, I do apologize that I did get a little bit heated up right over there. But, yeah, this is just to say that, well, like I said before, it's hard for many of these people to complain about these series and not sound bigoted. And that's how a lot of them would take a lot of their reputation and a lot of their credibility away from them. And honestly, with me at this point, it's going to be really tough to move forward and see a new animated series or like a new animated project would be announced, and then you see the internet just getting all heated up and go attack others. It's a lot like if the cartoon community has not moved on from the mentality of the Teen Titans Go hate. That people just hate animated reboots of shows like Teen Titans Go and the Powerpuff Girls, and they think that they would improve themselves upon it, but no. They're still doing the exact same thing, attacking whatever show that there is. And also, you know, the big thing that really does make it ridiculous about these series getting all these complaints is the fact that many of them don't even exist. They're still in development right now. Like High Guardian Spice, that, as you could probably see by the title, it's not out until 2019, and even Thundercats Roar is not out until 2019. And even when the complaints are at the highest with She-Ra, it wasn't even released yet. So people really are at the point that they're so impatient about finding something to criticize about or find something to complain about, that they're just working with the materials that they have and just go with that, with the very little evidence that they would be offered with. And it's honestly just ridiculous. And yes, I will say this. Like, if you really have to come to the conclusion that somehow shows like High Guardian Spice or with She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, like, if the only evidence that they would offer is just a few pictures, not even like actual pieces of animation, but just only images, and you have to come to the conclusion by saying that it has a feminist agenda, then honestly at that point, you gotta accept that you're sexist. You just hate women, okay? You don't know about how this series might actually be. Maybe there is no actual feminist agenda in there. You're just immediately jumping to conclusions over stuff that we haven't fully seen yet. We haven't fully checked if there is actual, if there even is an actual agenda that is in there. And honestly, you just want to try to push your own agenda with the little materials that they're godforsaken offered. I mean, are you freaking kidding? Now, granted, like, if you look at She-Ra right now, you're not going to find as much complaints that it's spreading a feminist agenda, but when when just one picture came out, that's when people flipped their lid and jumped to godforsaken conclusions, and it's honestly godforsaken ridiculous. And I feel like at this point, when people would say that there's a new series coming out soon that would have either a feminist agenda or an SJW agenda, honestly, I see it very similar to the CalArts style. It's very similar in the way that it's honestly a thing that they would make up for themselves to justify their hate on a newly announced thing that has even yet to be released. And who knows? Maybe with High Guardian Spice, there is no theme of feminism or stuff like that. Maybe with High Guardian Spice, it'll probably be the best series to ever come out of Crunchyroll, and it might end up being as popular as Ruby or stuff like that. But no, honestly, it's just, people just are like, honestly, the internet just really seems to be so impatient with expressing an opinion or want to complain or hate something. They just want to go all out on it, and that is something that I feel like it's just ridiculous. It's just shameful. And overall, with what we've been through with shows like Thundercats Roar, with High Guardian Spice, and with She-Ra, it really is the year that the cartoon community should seriously be ashamed of themselves. They should seriously be ashamed and disappointed with the kind of behavior that they are expressing, not just on cartoons, but cartoons that don't even exist yet. That they have to go and attack individuals because of a newly announced thing. And honestly, like, and I can understand, maybe there are some I can understand that there would be some legitimate complaints about High Guardian Spice or Thundercats Roar or with She-Ra. But those legitimate complaints would be overshadowed by the idiots jumping to conclusions and spreading conspiracy theories like, oh, this has an SJW agenda, they're ruining my childhood, they're forcing in the CalArts style. You know, it's just ridiculous. And honestly, this is the kind of behavior that should be looked down upon. And this is why, like, 2018 really is the year in which the reputation of the cartoon community just fully died right over here. Like, it's just flat out dead. And honestly, with how many people reacted, they should be ashamed of themselves for that. I mean, seriously. Okay, so now that I got all that out of the way, I would like to know your thoughts right over here on the chat wall, and I want to know what you think about the whole controversy that went behind shows like High Guardian Spice, with Thundercats Roar, and with, what's the other one? With She-Ra. I want to know your thoughts on this. Okay, let's see now. Let's see. Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Back to the rooms that it didn't ground running. No, sorry, nope. No All-Star here. Anyways, Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Oh, didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb. So much to do, so much to see, so what's wrong with taking the backseat? I said no All-Star today. Fudge, nabbit. Okay. Alright, so let's see. This reminds me a lot of the anti-SJW community, where they would care more about their opinions more than people. They accuse any person they don't agree with being an SJW. This has happened to me plenty of times, by the way. You guys have no idea how many times I've been accused as an SJW. Anyways, also, anti-SJWs have been complaining about High Guardian Spice and calling SJW fem-Nazis propaganda. Yeah, sure. Yeah, not surprised there. Let's see. I say sit down, shut up, and just watch instead of jumping to conclusions of any series that no one has watched yet. Do you agree, Matt? Yes, absolutely. That's the thing. Like, honestly, you're allowed to have doubts. You're allowed to have anticipations. But honestly, jumping to conclusions to spread these crazy conspiracy theories is something that I'm not cool with. Let's see. I personally feel nostalgia. I personally feel nostalgia is a major component to the cartoon community rage. If shows like She-Ra, Teen Titans Go, and Thundercats Roar weren't based on beloved properties, nobody would raise an eye. Yeah, definitely, absolutely. That's the thing. It's just that we do live in an age where probably the most marketable thing is nostalgia. And it's not just with TV shows like what... Oh, excuse me. And it's not just with TV shows like with what Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon are doing. Case in point, look at the Disney live-action remakes. I'm just saying, dude. Okay, let's see now. Ironically, the anti-SJWs are worse than the SJWs they love to complain about. No, you know the thing is that when anti-SJWs complain about SJWs, they're actually talking about themselves. That's the thing. Like, they say that, oh, social justice warriors complain. Oh, they complain too much. They're easily offended. You state one fact about why Donald Trump is not a good president, and they get triggered. They want to crawl back into their frickin' safe space. So really, like, the ones that are the most snowflakes are the ones that would accuse other people of being snowflakes for criticizing legitimate issues like race and gender and sexuality and all that kind of stuff. So really, yeah, if you think people are snowflakes for how women are treated or how African Americans are treated, then you, sir, are the snowflake. I'm just saying, white honky ass boy. Okay, so with all that said, I think we're pretty much good right over here. So, yeah, I think it's now time that we should go and move on from the whole controversy. And for the next one, though, we're gonna go into a bit of a sad note, per se. This one is going to be a bit teary-eyed, so I recommend grabbing a tissue because we're gonna be looking back at those who has unfortunately left us this year. And there are definitely a lot of them. So for number 3 on this list, I would like to say it is the In Memoriam. And this year, we have seen a lot of people who have unfortunately passed away. In fact, just recently, I saw a video of many prominent voice actors and people who did amazing roles in animation that are no longer with us. But for this one, I want to go and highlight many of the animation people that have unfortunately passed away. And this year, for some reason, there have been so much prominent animation people, like people who have left a serious impact in the animation industry that are no longer with us. So, first of all, I would like to go and talk about the first major animation person that has passed away. And yes, you know, there are a lot of them that some people are even mentioning in the chat wall, ranging from, of course, there's like Bud Lucky. They're trying to think of some other ones as well. There's the Andrew. I forgot his name. Is Andrew, the guy who worked at Pixar, and he's been a strong comrade to Brad Bird. But Anyways, let's go ahead and begin. Our first person who passed away, Isao Takahata, who passed away at the age of 82. And Isao Takahata, as you guys know, is actually the legendary filmmaker who is the co-founder of Studio Ghibli, along with Toshio Suzuki and Hayao Miyazaki. And on top of that, he has been working in animation all his life, starting with his directorial, or like, he did a lot of animation works in at Toei Animation, and even directing his own feature film there, Horus and the Sun, or I think the title is somewhere around that line. I'm not 100% sure. If you guys know it in the chat wall, you can correct me there. And from there, he would also go and direct many well-known and many that have been regarded as some of the best animated films out there, like on top of like what Hayao Miyazaki has done. This is the man who has directed works such as Grave of the Fireflies, Only Yesterday, Pom Poko, My Neighbor the Yamadas, and his magnum opus that many people would refer to, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. So, unfortunately, he has passed away. And does it mention here? Like, I have an article on CNN. Ah, yes, it even states on this CNN article that according to the statement, Takahata died at 1:19 a.m. on Thursday, April 5th, at a Tokyo hospital after fighting lung cancer. But then several months later, in fact, this person has unfortunately passed away one day before my birthday, and this is someone who you could say that he produced animation for an entire generation, and that is Will Vinton, known to be the father of claymation, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 70, where in this Variety article it states that Vinton's children announced his death in a Facebook post, writing that he had been battling multiple myeloma for 12 years. And so, unfortunately, this year, I guess the disease ended up winning, and we no longer have Will Vinton with us. And for those of you who don't know, Will Vinton, as I said before, is the father of claymation, and he has produced many popular commercials, special effects, and even TV shows during his time. So this is the man who made the California Raisins, he made the Noid, he did the TV show The PJs, and he even made a really well-crafted animated series, a really well-crafted animated movie called The Adventures of Mark Twain, which is like an entire, like a whole homage to the man, which is the movie that is known to be the only feature film in history so far to be made of 100% clay. So it really is safe to say that Will Vinton really does have an animation style that really spanned, that really defined an entire generation. Oh, and just a little update on what someone said about Isao Takahata. His first directorial debut is actually with Horus, Prince of the Sun, or The Great Adventures of Horus, Prince of the Sun. Yes, thank you very much, Wario94. Okay, so that's pretty much with Will Vinton, that he is sadly no longer with us. And then probably the biggest and most unfortunate death that happened this year, and probably the most noteworthy death, would be Stan Lee. And I mean, Stan Lee is a man that needs no introduction whatsoever. Stan Lee is known to be one of the most legendary people working at Marvel, the Walt Disney of comics, some could say, where he would make, of course, he's very well known for his numerous of cameos in several Marvel movies, but this is the man who is known to be the co-creator of the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, and Spider-Man. Now, I know that some people could stop me and say that, hold on a sec, Stan Lee is more known about comic books. Why would he be mentioned here when this is all about animation? Well, the thing with Stan Lee is that with him, he left such a massive impact in our culture, that his works have left such a huge impact that really he's known to be an inspiration across all different sorts of mediums, in comics, in movies, in TV shows, and so much more. And yes, this even involves animation. And if you don't believe me, all I can say is just Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That should pretty much tell you that even in this year, how Stan Lee is a major influence in animation. In fact, actually, on a side note, it's actually very interesting to note how Stan Lee made the most animation cameos this year. Like, more than ever, there have been a lot of mainstream animated features that did include a Stan Lee cameo. It started out, ironically, with Teen Titans Go to the Movies, even though that's a DC property, but they did make a good joke with that. There was also Ralph Breaks the Internet, and again, just recently with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which that one among all those is actually the most inspiring. It's actually the one that really did highlight Stan Lee as kind of like this inspirational mentor. So even in that movie, that like Stan Lee's cameo was actually fantastic, and I think it was either Phil Lord or Chris Miller that said it best, that because he passed away, that cameo is a lot more meaningful than it was when he was alive. So finally, though, there is one more death that honestly is probably not as big as Stan Lee, but it definitely is the biggest one in terms of animation that really had the entire internet grieving. And I'm talking about, of course, Stephen Hillenburg, who has passed away at the age of 57 due to ALS, in which he was diagnosed March of last year. And of course, Stephen Hillenburg is known to be the legendary creator of SpongeBob SquarePants. So honestly, overall, with a lot of these, this is really a year in which many of the deaths, they really do hurt. Like, a lot of them have really kind of like it really does sadden me this year, because there are a lot of people that have touched the lives of many animators, a lot of animation fans, and a lot of people in general, especially with Stan Lee. But for me personally, I would say that if there is one death that has that really did sadden me this year, that really did make me upset, it really would have to be Stephen Hillenburg. I mean, SpongeBob is one of my favorite TV shows growing up. Did I mispronounce his name again? I don't know. I'm never the best with that anyway. But what I'm trying to say is that with Stephen Hillenburg, I mean, SpongeBob has been a show that I've loved as a kid and honestly growing up, down to the point that SpongeBob has been a major influence, and also a bit of an influence with the way that I would make my videos as well. That's how much this series has really inspired me, and Stephen Hillenburg really did help me with that. You know, he helped me, like, in a way, Stephen Hillenburg indirectly helped me become who I am right now with SpongeBob. And honestly, I couldn't thank him enough. But also with the other ones as well, they really are sad. I mean, of course, Stan Lee is a very unfortunate loss. Like, especially when this is the guy who helped make Marvel become what it is today. I mean, that really is a bit unfortunate that now he is gone. But also with Isao Takahata, he really is a bit of a fascinating man to look into, especially when doing my research for Animation Lookback Studio Ghibli, when discussing about Isao Takahata and how apparently he is regarded as a very difficult director to work with, but a man who really wants to take animation to the next level. If there's one thing that he hates, is to make animation the traditional way, and that's why he would go and try to make he would try to develop new styles and give his animated works a very unique twist. Rather it be with the Tale of the Princess Kaguya looking exactly like an ancient Japanese storybook coming to life, or even with Grave of the Fireflies, where instead of using black outlines, they would use brown outlines in order to really make these characters have a distinct look onto them. But also with Will Vinton as well. And like Isao Takahata, this is another individual that honestly I have been very fascinated with, especially when working on animation look back, the best of stop motion, and learning a lot about his different works, including some of the stuff that he has done for movies as well, not just with Mark Twain, but he would also go and develop the special effects for Disney projects, and even with Michael Jackson as well, for projects such as The Return to Oz. And then he would do some of the special effects for Captain EO. And then he would later go and do Moonwalker, which you see a little bit of a pattern. That's why there's actually a bit of a connection where Return to Oz, that's a movie by Disney that he would have to do the special effects, in which Disney was impressed with his work there, so they also brought him on board for Captain EO, in which Michael Jackson noticed him and decided to bring him on board to do a segment for Moonwalker. So, honestly, Will Vinton is definitely a very fascinating man. And also, on a side note, there is one thing I would like to mention with Will Vinton is the way that he would his life will actually be highlighted pretty soon, hopefully by next year, where Mark Evans is going to be making a documentary called Welcome to My Daydream, the story of Will Vinton. And I have actually done an interview with Mark Evans himself, and I talked about the documentary and about the stuff that Will Vinton has done. So really, this is a year, especially for an animation fan, where it really did hurt. Like, for animation people, this is our 2016. This is the year where many prominent animation figures that really shaped animation how it is today are no longer with us, and it just really hurts. So honestly, with all the people who have passed away, I just want to say, may they rest in peace, and hopefully their legacy will forever live on. And with that said, I would like to know from the chat wall right over here, and I want to know about your thoughts about some of the recent people that have passed away. Who is it in particular? It doesn't even have to be animation related. Who is it that you grieve the most about one's passing this year? I would like to know your thoughts. Let's see now. Oh boy, someone actually developed a whole list. Rest in peace to Isao Takahata, Stephen Hawking, Bud Lucky, Will Vinton, R.E. Ermey, David Ogden Stiers. Oh, that's another sad one as well. David Ogden Stiers, the prominent Disney voice who has done a lot of characters, most notably Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast. Let's see. Aretha Franklin, Steve Ditko, Burt Reynolds, Avicii, Stan Lee, Stephen Hillenburg, as well as many more beloved celebrities and makers who passed this year. Also this year, I lost two relatives, one of my aunts, who is my dad's sister-in-law, and my mother's cousin. Rest in peace to all. Sorry to hear about that, dude, and hopefully they will rest in peace as well. Let's see. I'm still waiting for a documentary on Stephen Hillenburg called A Man and His Sponge. It should be from the director of Won't You Be My Neighbor. Ooh, that's going to be a pretty interesting one. Let's see. If it wasn't for Stephen Hillenburg, many of us wouldn't have a childhood. SpongeBob was a show that made kids around the world be happy, and all I want to say is, Stephen Hillenburg, thank you for giving me instead of the best day ever, the best life ever. Yeah, that's definitely true right over there. Let's see. So far, Pompoko is the only film I've seen Isao was involved with. I say one movie is enough to like someone as a source of inspiration for tackling anything that seems impossible to achieve. Plus, I found his history fascinating, especially in your animation look back in 2015. Let's see, I'll read one more. SpongeBob was one of my favorite shows growing up, so I was sad to hear that he died. I love that he did both for Nickelodeon and people's childhoods. His legacy will live on forever. Yeah, it definitely is sad. It's, yeah, I can definitely tell that people are definitely sad in the chat wall, and probably to the people listening and watching this as well. But, you know what? let's go ahead and brighten the mood. I mean, we've went through the controversial, the anger-inducing, and also with the sad parts, but now let's go ahead and jump to some of the brighter side, some of the things that are worth cheering about. And maybe with this one right over here will probably be something to lift up people's spirits and see how animation can really be a powerhouse, especially at the box office. And coming in at number 2 on our list, we have the incredible box office records. Now, this year in particular, we have seen many successful animated films. Nothing too noteworthy, but a lot that did very well at the box office. Most namely, movies like Ralph Breaks the Internet, as well as The Grinch. But none could ever be more successful than with Incredibles 2, the latest animated feature by Pixar Animation Studios. In fact, it actually did so well at the box office that, according to my source here at Box Office Mojo, it managed to gather a total of 608.5... here it is. With $608.58 million domestically, with a worldwide total of $1.24 billion. So that definitely is a lot of money, and it definitely is one of the most successful movies of this year. In fact, as it accumulated so much of this money, it actually broke a lot of records at the same time. Now, I actually did some research, and I did compile an entire list. Now, this is not all of its records per se, but this is a list of at least some of the more noteworthy records that Incredibles 2 actually broke. Now, the records in which that Incredibles 2 actually did break down includes the biggest Thursday preview for an animated feature, which is the screenings that Incredibles 2 would have before its initial release on June 15th, in which on Thursday, it managed to gather $18.5 million. But also, the day later, on June 15th, it actually gathered the biggest single-day gross for an animated film with $71.2 million. In one day, mind you. In one day, Incredibles 2 actually made more than double than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse's opening weekend. That should really say a lot about the powerhouse that Incredibles 2 left this year. In fact, what's interesting to note about how it made $71.2 million in one day is that I don't think this year we have seen any other animated film actually make more than $70 million on its opening weekend. So really, Incredibles 2 managed to beat everyone else in that one shot. But speaking of opening weekend, Incredibles 2 also broke the record for the biggest opening weekend ever for an animated film with $182.7 million. And keep in mind, that's just one weekend. And also on a side note, you do realize that most animated features this year don't even have a total of $180 million on the domestic box office, yet Incredibles 2 managed to do that in one whole weekend. And just on another side note about its opening weekend, it also broke several different records as well. This $182.7 million is also the biggest opening weekend for a PG film, the second biggest opening weekend for a June movie, and also the third biggest opening weekend for a 2018 movie, right behind Avengers Infinity War and Black Panther. And on top of that, as it would continue its box office run, it would also be the first ever animated feature in history to surpass $500 million domestically. And on top of that, it would also be the first ever animated feature in history to gather $600 million domestically. So in total, with its domestic numbers, it now holds the title of the highest grossing PG film, the highest grossing animated film domestically, and also the third highest grossing film of 2018, behind the same movies that I talked about. But when we do look at the worldwide number, it's $1.24 billion that it has managed to gather. It has now obtained the record of the fourth highest grossing film of 2018, behind the movies I've mentioned like Black Panther, Infinity War, on top of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It is also the highest grossing superhero film not based on a comic, so this is the highest grossing superhero film that doesn't have any association with comics whatsoever, not Marvel, not DC, or any of that stuff. It currently holds the title of the highest grossing Pixar film, and the biggest one of them all, Incredibles 2, is officially the second highest grossing animated feature in history, just behind Frozen. And I just want to mention is that there is actually one scary thing about the fact that it actually did get into second place behind Frozen, because believe it or not, it was actually very, very close. It was this close to actually breaking Frozen's record, where specifically Incredibles 2 managed to gather $1.242 billion. Frozen, by comparison, made $1.276 billion. So by doing the math, there's only a $34 million difference. Now, I know $34 million sounds like a lot, but in terms of the box office with major powerhouses, that is ridiculously close. That is like horrifyingly close. So it would be shocking to see how Incredibles would have probably been the highest grossing animated film to beat Frozen, but that doesn't actually seem to be the case. Now, the reason why I would put this like way up here right at number 2 is not just the fact that Incredibles 2 managed to break all these box office records, but it also did that and go up and beyond. Because when you look at the previous record holders, like Finding Dory, Shrek the Third, and even Minions, they didn't have, like, their numbers, they pale in comparison to what Incredibles 2 has just done. In fact, if you look at Finding Dory and what that did, you look at those numbers, it doesn't seem all that much. Now, Finding Dory, I gotta say, it actually did held the record onto some of what Incredibles 2 broke. It used to be the biggest record holder of the biggest Thursday preview for an animated film, the biggest opening weekend for an animated film, and the highest grossing animated film domestically. But you see those numbers, Finding Dory only made $486 million domestically, on top of an opening weekend of $135 million. Yet Incredibles 2 managed to really surpass that with ease, like without a problem. Even with the Thursday preview, Incredibles 2 actually made double than what Finding Dory did when it premiered, like when it did its Thursday preview, where I think it opened like with like somewhere a little over $9 million, and that's it. So it's kind of crazy to see how Incredibles 2 managed to break those records without a problem. But I think the reason why it managed to break those records and go up and beyond, it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's really the fact that people have waited 14 years for Incredibles 2. Keep in mind, before the movie came out, it really was the most demanded and the most anticipated sequel ever for an animated film. And 14 years, that is a long time. That's enough for a baby to have a childhood and to enter upon its teenage years. Like, that baby would already be in high school right now. And not only did they manage to let it out, but it made the wait worth it. It delivered what people wanted. Now, granted, it's not as good or as legendary as the first film, but what it did in its own merits is a fantastic job. And people took notice of this and really ate up with Incredibles 2. They went to go see it, and it just really blew their minds to see more adventures with the Parr family. So that really does explain how it managed to break these records. And there are several factors, but I think the main one really is the factor that it made the 14-year wait worth it. And you could definitely tell that this was something that audiences highly demanded if they responded so positively to the point of making it go up to $6 million domestically alone. That's just purely insane. Now, the one thing that I will say, though, the one additional comment that I would like to make about Incredibles 2 that I am honestly worried about is going to be regarding the backlash. Because if there is one thing that people hate more than a bad animated film, is a really successful animated feature. And I'm starting to see the pattern going on with this, where even though they're not going to hate those movies for the same reason why they would hate a bad animated feature, they're not like, for the most part, some people are not going to go around saying that they hate Incredibles 2 or they hate Frozen because they're terribly made movies and stuff like that. But it's more that they hate it for more different reasons, and the success of it really does play a big factor. I mean, we've seen the big backlash that's going on with Frozen and with the Despicable Me franchise because of how successful those movies have become. And I actually am starting to witness that myself with the comments section on the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2018. Now, granted, the comments section has always been infamously known to be a place that's filled with scum and villainy, and it really is a section where people just want to desperately find something to go and complain about and pretend to be all angry about it. I mean, if I had a nickel for how many times people complain about me, about my voice, about what I wear, or that I would bring in a bit of politics into this, oh boy, I can easily just retire right now and live in a mansion. But anyways, going back to what I was talking about, if there is one major complaint that I have received about my new top 5, it would be the factor that I put Incredibles 2 over Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, granted, I did put them on the best list, but the factor that I did that move, that I put Incredibles 2 in a higher spot than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it actually did make a lot of people upset. I mean, like, technically, I also did put in Isle of Dogs over those two films as well, but mainly the notion that I said Incredibles 2 is in a higher spot than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that really did make a lot of people angry, and I'm starting to see in the comment section a lot of people just bashing Incredibles 2 for that little move, saying like, screw Incredibles 2, it's just a soulless cash grab that just copies from the original. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a freaking masterpiece and deserves nothing but praise, and you're not allowed to criticize it, and all that kind of crap. Like, it really is starting to be a bit ridiculous, and I am starting to see a bit of the backlash starting to develop. And I can probably imagine that it's only going to get worse when award season comes, because I wouldn't be surprised if Incredibles 2 is going to be the one that's going to walk away with some of the big awards. Like, Incredibles 2 will be the winner of the Annie Awards, of the Golden Globes for Best Animated Feature, and even for the Oscars. And honestly, I feel like that's just gonna fuel the hate, where Incredibles 2 might be viewed in the same parallels as Frozen 2 and Despicable Me, where people are mostly going to hate about the factor that it's so successful and one of the most successful animated features ever. So that's honestly one thing that I am a bit worried about, but honestly, I think the best response for that would be to just wait and see. But regardless, I just want to say with this, congratulations to Brad Bird and the entire team at Pixar for making such a highly successful movie with Incredibles 2, and you definitely made those 14-year wait, you made that 14-year wait worth it. So, yeah, that's pretty much my little piece about Incredibles 2, and I would like to know in the chat wall, what do you guys think about the success of Incredibles 2? Do you think it deserves the record-breaking numbers? Do you think it deserves a success? Are you guys happy for Incredibles 2? Are you guys upset about it? Let me know what you guys think right over here. Let me know in the chat wall, what do you think about the success of Incredibles 2? Let's see now. Let's see. Are there any people commenting yet? Okay, yeah, let's see. AniMat, I just realized that Incredibles 2 is this year's Jaws because, number one, both movies made so much money, and two, they lasted from June to December. I don't know. You could say that about a lot of movies as well. I don't think Incredibles 2 and Jaws would be the only ones doing that. So I'm just saying right there. Let's see. When your worst to best list came out yesterday, I was more surprised that Incredibles 2 wasn't the best animated film of the year and that Isle of Dogs was named the best. Yeah, and I just want to say about that video in particular that, you know, it wasn't an easy list to make, especially with the best list. Because I could say right now, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Isle of Dogs, and Incredibles 2, it really was a bit of a neck-to-neck race. Like, some could debatably say that they're all equally as good to one another, but honestly, like, after a long thought, and I have to accept that I have to be honest with myself with you guys, I pretty much made the list as it is, and in the case of Isle of Dogs, I know that even if Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse would be in a league over Incredibles 2, I still would have to put Isle of Dogs at number one because it is an original animated feature. And considering how in 2019 we're getting a whole bunch of sequels, we need to appreciate as much original features as we can get. So yeah, honestly, that's what I'm saying right now. In 2019, make sure you guys give a lot of love to Laika's Missing Link. That's all I'm saying. Let's see now. Incredibles 2 really shows that animated films have been taken more seriously than ever before. Congrats to Brad Bird and company. Godspeed to Pixar films in the future. Looking forward to Toy Story 4 and onward. Okay. Let's see. Hey Matt, what's the betting that Toy Story 4 might beat the record of Incredibles 2? I don't know. And, you know, that's honestly one tough thing to say about it. It's hard to really imagine that there's going to be an animated film that can easily break the record of Incredibles 2 because, like I said before, not only did it break records, but it went up and beyond, where, like, Incredibles 2 is both the first film ever to surpass 500 and 600 million domestically at the box office, so it's going to be tough to imagine. I could be wrong, and there could be some, but even next year's movies like Toy Story 4, Secret Life of Pets 2, and even Frozen 2, it's going to be hard to imagine if this is really going to be the case. Okay, let's see. I think animated movies deserve success, even bad ones, but I don't think Incredibles 2 deserve more than a 7, though I thought Spider-Man Spider-Verse was better. And I mean, if you guys like Spider-Verse more than Incredibles 2, that's perfectly fine, man. Like, you know, that's fine. I don't mind either way what you prefer. Personally, I love them both. So, yeah, like, you know, it's on you guys. So, I don't worry. Let's see. Oh boy, some people are already trying to make bets about next year's box office race about who's going to be better, Toy Story 4 or Frozen 2. I don't know, guys. Honestly, all I can say is just it's just we'll have a bit of a wait and see kind of attitude on that. I think that's the safest and best bet onto that. Let's see. I think with that said, I think we should be good with Incredibles 2 records. And now, it's time to get ready, folks, because we are at the grand finale. Yes, we are at number 1 right now, the biggest animation news story of 2018. And I just want to say right now that I actually did a last minute change. Originally, I thought about putting the incredible box office records at number 1, but then today I realized, well, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the future, and who knows, maybe there is going to be another animated film that's going to easily come in and just break these box office records without a problem whatsoever. I mean, like, keep in mind, like I said before, the previous record holder was Finding Dory, and that was released 2 years before Incredibles 2, so you never know what's going to happen in the future and who could be the next big box office breaker from there, so maybe we won't see Incredibles 2 hold on to these records for long. But I will say that with the number 1 that I have right over here, this is going to be something that will definitely change the future of animation as we know it. Or more specifically, it's going to change the future of Disney animation as we know it. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the #1 animation news story of 2018, Disney Animation under new management. Yes, it is official now. Pete Docter and Jennifer Lee are going to be the brand new chief creative officers of both Disney Animation Studios, replacing John Lasseter. So, if we want to go into this story, we have to start with the very beginning. Now, if you may remember, in November of last year, John Lasseter was hit with the #MeToo movement, where apparently he has been exposed about his behavior, especially towards women while at Pixar, where it's not necessarily as bad as the practices of Chris Savino or even John Kay, but he still would go and do a lot of sexual misconducts, ranging from kissing women on the lips, touching women by their thighs, and even giving long, awkward hugs. So from there, John Lasseter immediately went into a 6-month sabbatical, giving Disney enough time to really think about the future of Disney animation if they really want to keep him or not. And thus, ultimately, sometime after... Yes, actually, as this article from The Hollywood Reporter states right here from June 19th, just after the release of Incredibles 2, it seems that they ultimately decided that they would let go of John Lasseter, that they would put Pete Docter in the position of Chief Creative Officer at Pixar Animation Studios, while Jennifer Lee, the one of the writers of Wreck-It Ralph, I believe, and also the co-director of Frozen, to be the Chief Creative Officer at Walt Disney Animation Studios, leaving John Lasseter to be only having what was it? An admirer? No, not an admirer, but putting him in an advisor role just until the end of this year. So at the end of this year, like when 2019 comes, John Lasseter would no longer be associated with Disney whatsoever. However, if this wasn't enough, if it wasn't enough that we are seeing new leading roles at Disney and Pixar, apparently another major animation powerhouse is stepping down. Not as disgracefully as John Lasseter, but he has announced his retirement. Yes, Ed Catmull, the other co-founder of Pixar, announced his retirement, where at the end of this year, he would be stepping down from his role as the president of both Disney and Pixar Animation, while he would still stay on as an advisory role up until the end of summer of 2019. Now, there isn't really anyone who's going to be replacing Ed Catmull at this point. There's actually other presidents as well that are going to be filling more of his shoes to be a full-time president. Like Jim Morris is now the full-time president at Pixar, and Andrew Milstein is going to be the full-time president at Walt Disney Animation Studios. So that is the major news about this, is that both John Lasseter and Ed Catmull are both leaving Disney at the end of 2018, and starting by 2019, we are seeing brand new leaderships, or brand new for the most part. Like now it's going to be the full presidency of Andrew Milstein and Jim Morris, but more importantly, the new chief creative role of Pete Docter and Jennifer Lee. Now, granted, this was something that people did expect. We have heard rumors for many years about how Pete Docter would be the person to be the heir of John Lasseter if John ever decides to leave Disney and Pixar. But Jennifer Lee does seem like a bit of a surprise, because at least with Pete Docter, like, this guy is a veteran of Pixar. He has been there since the very beginning, and even one of the first ever animators hired by Pixar. And as for Jennifer Lee, like, she came on board just at the start of this decade, and then really quickly climbed up the ladder, and really did play a major role, not just with movies like Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen, but also playing an executive producer role on movies such as Zootopia, I believe, and Ralph Breaks the Internet. You can correct me if I'm wrong, by the way. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that would be the case with Jennifer Lee. But yeah, like we have known about this, but one of the reasons why I did put this at number one is mainly because of the shock value, the surprise factor that this is legitimately happening. Because I can tell you this right now, guys, that if I told you that these events would be happening on October of last year, so just a little, like, imagine if we go back in time a little over a year ago, like maybe on my birthday, like on October of 2017, if I told you that these things would be happening and that by the end of 2018, both John and Ed are going to be leaving Disney for good, putting in a new leadership role at both Disney and Pixar Animation, you would think I am insane. You would think that there would be no way that this would happen. Like, especially when at the time, before the whole controversy happened, John Lasseter was viewed as like the modern Walt Disney. He was really the most powerful man of animation, but then the whole controversy happened and he quickly got disgraced. And also on top of that, like, even though like it's been like months in the making, like, you do realize that the time frame does seem relatively short, right from the moment the controversy occurred up to this point right over here, where Pete Docter and Jennifer Lee have stepped in to completely replace John Lasseter. Like, it's only a few months, in fact, a little over half a year, but still. Like, John Lasseter went from, like, the most influential, the most inspirational, the most powerful man of animation to being completely disgraced and having his role be completely switched up, where now new people are taking charge of it. And on top of that, with Ed Catmull going out, like, it really is crazy to just think about. Now, granted, Ed Catmull, like, even though he has done a lot of shady practices in the past, they're not necessarily as mainstream as what John Lasseter did, so he will maintain a bit of his reputation as he steps down from Disney and Pixar. But still, it honestly is kind of crazy to think about that these two guys, the two people who built Pixar to become one of the top animation studios in the modern era, and also brought on board by Bob Iger to go and fix up Disney animation to become better than ever, like, now they're going to be leaving, and we're going to be having some new people on board taking charge of Disney's animation department. And on top of that, as well, as a result of this, as a result of John Lasseter leaving, we have also seen more new updates on what Disney wants to do with its animation. Most namely, the fact that they did shut down Disney Toon Studios, in which you may know is the animation studio that brought us all the different direct-to-video Disney sequels. So they no longer have a use for it, and they ultimately decided to go and shut that studio down. Hopefully, the animators who used to work there, they found new jobs, so I do wish the best for them. But yeah, we do see what was going on so far. Like, you know, say what you will about John Lasseter, love him or hate him, but you can't deny the fact that he actually did do a highly successful job, like, really flipping Disney to have it be back into one of the top animation studios right now. Because back in the mid 2000s, Disney was in another dark era where a lot of their movies were flopping, and on top of that, a lot of the movies they were releasing were just flat out weak, especially with Home on the Range and Chicken Little. And then that's when you brought Ed Catmull and John Lasseter did, and they completely changed it, where now they not only brought back their reputation, but they even became major box office powerhouse capable of making billion-dollar movies. Not just with Frozen, but we've also seen it happen with Zootopia as well. And I mean, this is not to say, this is on top of like all the other major movies that they have done, including like Tangled, Princess and the Frog, Moana, Wreck-It Ralph, and Big Hero 6, and all those films. So they really did leave Disney Animation for the better, despite some of the stuff that has occurred despite the stuff that they have done. So say what you will about John, yeah, like he is a bit of a pervert, but he did turn Disney animation for the better. And I'm not saying that as my opinion, that's a legitimate fact that you can't really deny. I mean, without John Lasseter, Disney animation would be pretty much screwed over entirely, or probably even dead. Who knows? So the thing is, it's kind of crazy to imagine that now they are going to be gone. And another reason why I did put this at number one is mainly because this news story right over here is going to be the landmark moment where we are going to see a brand new era of Disney animation, now under the creative leadership of Jennifer Lee and Pete Docter. Now, who knows what kind of animated features are they going to do? Maybe they're going to stick a little bit of the same as to what they are doing right now, where at Disney Animation, they're going to do a blend of contemporary movies along with fairy tale classics and with Pixar as well, continuing making more original features. But who knows? There could be some new things. Like maybe now there's going to be a lot less sequels that are going to be developing. I know that starting in 2020, we're not going to be getting as much sequels as we used to, especially with the announcement of Onward being a new original Pixar film that's going to be all fantasy based. And honestly, it's going to be crazy to think about how 2019 really is going to change a lot because like maybe it's going to stay the same, but I could probably expect that we are probably going to be getting a lot of different kinds of movies. And keep in mind, considering the influence that Disney currently has in the animation field, this could also shape up onto how other studios are going to be making their movies as well. That if Disney does it in a certain way, then we'll probably see others like Lego Movie, not Lego Movie, like Warner Brothers, like DreamWorks, like Sony, like Illumination. Like maybe they're gonna retweak the way they would make their movie to adjust in the current environment that Disney is setting upon in the animation field. So this really is going to be a new big chapter. And with that, I definitely do wish Pete Docter and Jennifer Lee the best of luck in their new positions, and hopefully they will keep the legacy of both Pixar and Disney alive under their new leadership. So I'm sure that starting in 2020, we will see a new era of Disney and Pixar films, and it's because of this moment in 2018 that is really going to shake things up. And that is why I would place this as the number one biggest animation news story of 2018. Okay, so with that said, I want to know about your thoughts right over here, guys. I want to know about your opinion about this news right over here. And let me ask you guys, what do you think about the new leadership role of the new chief creative officers at Disney and Pixar? Are you guys forward with this? Are you disappointed that John Lasseter and Ed Catmull are leaving? Let me know what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts now. Okay, so let me see now. Here's my mouse. I'm very happy with Pete and Jennifer being the new heads. Now that the Monsters Inc. in the Hawaiian... now that the monster in the Hawaiian shirt is out for good, and Pixar's work environment will be a much safer place as a result, I'm very interested to see new creative direction that they'll enforce into future Pixar and Disney animation movies. All I can say at this point is best of luck to both of you. Let's see now. I'm very happy about the new management. Pete Docter with the help of Pete Docter with the help of Pixar, better than ever. Jennifer Lee, I just hope she could do this. I just knew it's happening. Speaking of Disney, I'm going to Walt Disney Studios in Burbank next month. Ooh, awesome. Okay. Let's see now. I hate what John Lasseter did. I wish Pete Docter and Jennifer Lee the best of luck. Okay, that's nice. Let's see. AniMat. I read an article that John Lasseter is interested in doing animation podcasts, and there are rival studios to Disney that would want to hire him. And I'm just going to say right now that just because John Lasseter left Disney, that doesn't mean that's going to be the last of him. Because the dude is not that old. He's like around in his 60s. So the guy is going to be looking for some work. So don't be surprised if you suddenly hear John Lasseter is going to be working at a new studio or something like that. So that's going to be a pretty tough thing for people to go and swallow. But I know that eventually it is going to happen that we will see John Lasseter back. And apparently John Lasseter is going to do an animation podcast. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. That's definitely for sure. But, yeah. All I could say is just brace yourselves for when you hear the news about John Lasseter going back to work. I'm just saying, guys. That could probably happen in 2019, but we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, any other ones? Let's see. Wish the best of luck to all, to Pete, to Jennifer, and the people at Disney Animation and Pixar for their future, especially John for his future. Oh boy, we still got people who still support John Lasseter, apparently. Oh, that's interesting. Alright, so, with that said and done, I think that's pretty much going to be it so far. I think this is going to conclude the 2018 edition of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. So, throughout this year, I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you guys so much for watching. And honestly, one of the best things as well that happened in 2018 is actually this podcast with AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. I just want to say thank you all for the amazing support that you have with this podcast right over here. I want to say thank you for making this such a great hit, and I can't wait to continue this throughout 2019 with more crazy adventures, with more madness happening. So this is definitely going to be a lot of fun. I've had a wonderful time with this podcast this year, and hopefully this will continue in the next one. So I just want to say to you all, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes!